Notre Dame kicks off spring practice tomorrow, and we'll get our first look at the Irish as they prepare to follow up their storybook season with another run to the national championship. Greg Flammang joins me to break down everything you need to know heading into spring ball on today's Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Tyler Wojciak and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports. And thank you for joining me here on Tuesday, March 18th, and for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later on in this episode. Also wanted to remind you to please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the podcast. Let's get into it. Notre Dame officially kicks off spring practice tomorrow, and Greg Flammang from Irish Sports Daily is going to stop by today for our annual spring practice preview. We covered a lot, including the quarterback competition, obviously, the other most intriguing position battles, potential breakout players, bold predictions, and Greg also shared some interesting insight about potential changes on defense with Chris Ash in charge. In recruiting news, Notre Dame capitalized on St. Patrick's Day once again by making it their own recruiting holiday and offered dozens of high school recruits in the class of 2027 on Monday. It's always a big event for the recruiting operation and a great way to win on social media during otherwise slow time of the year, but we're going to save coverage of that for tomorrow's show with recruiting insider Brian Smith. We're going to do another crossover episode with his podcast, The Portal, which you can also find here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So make sure you tune into that tomorrow morning. But for today's conversation, let's bring in Greg. All right, Greg Flammang from Irish Sports Daily is here to do our annual spring practice preview. And I went back and looked. This is our third straight year we've done this together. It's always a lot of fun. So let's dive right in. We know that spring practice doesn't allow for all of our questions to be answered, but what is the biggest question that you have that you think could be answered by the time the blue and gold game wraps up?
It could be answered. I think who is playing where on the offensive line, I think is good, right? I think people have a lot of questions about like Anthony Knapp specifically and where he's going to be. Is he going to be at left tackle? Are they going to try to move him to center? Are they going to try to move him to like guard or something, right? Like there's questions about where he is and then where Gerby Lambert is too. Like, is Anthony Knapp running with the ones at left tackle, like right away? Like, how do they fit Gerby Lambert in there? Can Gerby Lambert make a run? I think that'll be interesting to see just in terms of who is playing where for the offensive line. I think on the defensive line, as far as D tackle, like who is running with the ones there? Like, where's Elijah Hughes? Where is Jared Dawson? Is Jared Dawson like running with the ones right away? Is he going to be more of a backup, or at least so far, right? Like just kind of see who is playing where, who's the one, who's playing one tech, who's playing three tech, things like that. So I think that's kind of interesting in terms of finding out things. I think, how viable is Carson Hobbs? Who has the upper hand as like kind of that second safety with Jalen Stroman not at practice, he's injured, right? So like who's there in the pecking order between Luke Talich, Kennedy Urlacher, where's Bronte Johnson playing? Like those are the kind of the things that I'm monitoring throughout spring. Who's playing where?
There's a lot there that I want to get to, but I think Anthony Knapp is an interesting case because he started 15 games at left tackle last year. Nobody saw that coming going into the season. Now he's still on the mend. He's recovering from that ankle injury. But I think when you look at the offensive line, it feels crazy to say this. I think that left tackle might be the position he's least likely to play outside, like left guard. He's not going to take Billy Shroud's spot. Yeah. But isn't it kind of interesting how he started a full season there? And I look at it and I just think with Jagasaw and Lambert coming up, it would be a surprise if they kept him there. Do you kind of look at it the same way, or are you expecting him to move inside?
I don't know what to expect. I think that's the thing. Like he played really well. And I remember last spring, after the spring game, and he looked really good, that there were so many like Robert Hainsey comps. And I feel like they kind of played out that way in terms of, now everyone's talking about him at center. To be honest, I don't know. Like it's the thing is like when you have all that experience and everyone's thinking about Gerby Lambert moving into left tackle, well, he doesn't really have any experience, right? Like you do want to see kind of cohesiveness on the offensive line, especially when they have a quarterback battle coming up, like that's a whole thing. Like maybe just be cohesive on the offensive line, work in Gerby Lambert, and then get all your guys back in the summer and let the chips fall at that point. So it'll be interesting. Anthony Knapp played really well. The only thing is like as a freshman, he incurred a lot of penalties, which is normal, right? Like that's a normal thing for a freshman tackle to kind of endure. But he has a lot of experience and he played well. So I to be honest, I don't know if I think it's more like, or if I'd be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised by anything if he's left tackle or if he's at center. I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised if he wasn't a factor. Like that is the only thing that wouldn't surprise me. And when I say not a factor, like going forward into 2025, that would surprise me just because, again, you got all that experience and he played well.
Yeah, and I think even the holding penalties, those were a problem at the beginning of the year. By the second half of the season, he had really cut those down.
Yeah.
But I think so much of it just has to do with where they want to play Jagasaw. If they're like, this guy is our left tackle, then Anthony Knapp is a great chance to play, but it's probably going to be on the interior. But maybe Gerby Lambert pushes him now. I think it's always important to bring up. We all thought that Billy Schrauth was going to be ready to go as a redshirt freshman. He wasn't. He got beat out. But then his third season is when he really became one of the best players in the offensive line when he was healthy. So we have made it 5 minutes, haven't talked about the quarterback position yet. Maybe the longest that anyone has gone on a Notre Dame football podcast this offseason without bringing it up. But I've said throughout this offseason, we will not know who the starting quarterback is at the end of the spring, or at least it's very unlikely that we do. The coaching staff certainly isn't going to say it, but I think we're going to have a good sense of who number 3 is going to be, and that's going to kind of tell us everything else we need to know. So who do you think is going to be QB 3 by the end of spring practice?
I would say that's such a good question. I don't know.
It's kind of like a cop-out.
I think the most likely person is Minchie, but it's like, I don't know what that even means. I don't even know what I mean by that. Like, the thing is I don't know how you could do it and be fair to the other quarterbacks to name a starter after the spring, like to even come close.
They won't do it.
It's not possible because it's not fair. It wouldn't be fair. Like there's not enough reps to go around, and there's so much to be gleaned. And to be honest, it's not even like to Notre Dame's benefit to make it clear, right? Who that quarterback is going to be. I don't know that you could even say there's a number 3 after spring, because the thing is that the thing with Minchie is he has something that the other two don't. And I think if you were to tier it in terms of athleticism and running ability, I think it would be Minchie, Carr, Angeli. I think Angeli is kind of viable as a designed runner, obviously not like Riley Leonard, and not any kind of way like Kenny Minchie, I think, is the best athlete of all of them, right? And he's shown that. And so because of that, that's like really a wild card. Like that's a wild card in this, and you do want that on the roster. You do want that ability to really get into the zone read game, to really get into the design run game, like you saw with Riley Leonard on like 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, right? And, he has the livest arm in terms of he can kind of make any throw on the field, right? And Angeli and Carr have good arms, and maybe Carr has the best overall arm in terms of accuracy. But man, Kenny Minchie, like he's a guy who can go sidearm, he can change arm angles. He's really good at RPO stuff, like he did that in high school. So I feel like because he was third team last year, and then everyone kind of assumes that Carr is going to ascend, that he would be 3rd, but I don't know. I'd want his skill set on the roster. So it's hard for me. Like I feel like Angeli and Carr are kind of like their own type of quarterback, and then you go with Minchie as like, I don't want to say change of pace, but just like that athlete. You want that kind of athlete on your roster at the quarterback position because it opens up a lot, as we saw last year.
Yeah, and Mike Denbrock wants to run with his quarterback. He's done that throughout his time as an offensive coordinator. So I think Minchie is definitely going to be a viable option. I don't know how much you can run him in spring practice because he's a quarterback. He's probably going to be wearing a red jersey,
and you kind of don't have to because you know it's there. So it's you don't even have to try it. You know it's there. But they're going to do the throwing stuff, and they're going to have to figure out like who can handle, pressure, who handles pressure the best, who escapes pressure the best, right? But the Minchie elusiveness is sitting there. And so that's just kind of hangs over everything.
I just keep going in circles with the quarterback conversation, man, because you just look at what Steve Angeli did the past 2 seasons, and obviously most of what he did was in garbage time. But I think the fact that the coaching staff saw him as the number 2, the clear number 2. They never even tried to work in Minchie. Like, they were like, if Riley Leonard goes down, we're putting all of our faith in Steve Angeli. They made a point to put him in early. Like, he would come in during the third quarter of blowouts before the rest of the backups came in so that he could work with the starters. So I just don't see a world where he finishes third after spring. He's either going to be 1 or he's going to be 2. But you hear all these conversations from people in the national media, people who cover the team on a daily basis, and they're talking about it as if it's a 2-man race. And like, it's hard for me to see it that way because of what you said, what Kenny Minchie brings to the table. I think he's a real viable option, but I just keep going back to when Kirk Herbstreit was talking, after he had just done the national championship game, and he's talking about the future of Notre Dame, and he's really hyping up CJ Carr. And I'm just thinking, like, where is he getting that information? Oh yeah, he just spent several days talking to the Notre Dame coaching staff in prep. So it's like, it feels like the CJ Carr hype and all that is coming from the Gook. And then people who cover it are like, I don't know, I feel like Minchie's a good option. And I feel like we're in this weird debate where you and I, we see all 3 of those guys as an option, but it feels like so many people have just kind of cut it down to 2 before spring practice even started. Greg's going to be right back here with us in a second to break down Steve Angeli's future at Notre Dame and the other most important position battle for spring practice. But before we do, it is time for the Armada Team of the Week, brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our locked-on college basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart. From top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets, these guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada and clear-cut Team of the Week is the Florida Gators. The Gators, led by Walter Clayton, 17 points a game, just dominated the SEC tournament, winning each game by at least 9 points. Not only did Florida grab the 4th 1 seed, but they are the nation's most efficient offense. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say, go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what the Florida Gators have done here. It's clear that our Team of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. And with Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day, so protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Price is subject to underwriting and health questions.
Let me ask you something. Do you think that Steve Angeli can stay on the roster if all 3 quarterbacks are viable to start going into fall camp? Like coming out of spring.
Okay, so it's still a 3-man race and he hasn't really separated himself and they want to give reps.
And he could still win it. So in this scenario, he could still win the job. But do you think he can realistically stay on the roster?
I think he could, but it really just comes down to what he wants, because I do think, like, if you're a quarterback and you transfer after the spring, you're probably not going to start, right? Unless he goes to like a group of 5.
I don't know what his like options would be at that point, right? The reason I'm asking is because he's a little bit different than the rest of them in that, like, Minchie has multiple years. Carr obviously has multiple years. Angeli doesn't. He doesn't have that long. The COVID year stuff is gone now, right? So he doesn't have that many years to use up, and he can't really risk going another year as a backup at Notre Dame if he wants to be like a multi-year starter, if he has any sort of like pro aspirations, right?
Yeah.
Like for him, I think the calculus is a little bit different. And that also kind of hangs over like the whole conversation too. It's like he probably has the most urgency out of everybody. So that's why I'm asking. It's just
so Angeli has 2 years of eligibility remaining, this upcoming year included.
Yeah.
So the thing is, if he comes out of spring and he's looking at the room and he's like, man, I don't know if I'm going to start. And then he leaves. It's like, okay, are you going to go to a good program in the summer and become the starting quarterback? Maybe. We don't know what musical chairs are going to happen with the quarterbacks at other schools, but it's like, that just seems harder to do, to go to a new school, especially if he wants to play for like a competent, competitive program, to then become their starting quarterback just by, joining the team in the summer and doing fall camp. Like, I think he kind of risked it all, and he's like, I'm going for the Notre Dame starting quarterback job, and he made that decision, and I think he made the right one because he has a real chance to win this thing, but it is a risk because I think if he doesn't win, at that point he's probably just set up to be the backup again, because I think that actually would be better than going somewhere else, because I think he's already tasted big-time college football. It'd be kind of weird to go to, like, I don't know, Miami, Ohio after all this.
Yeah, then that's the part of it that I don't know. I don't know what's available to him. The other part, too, is, like, if he did win the job and, like, kind of struggled out of the gate like Riley Leonard did last year, that leash is going to be a lot shorter because of the younger guys that are behind him, whether it's Minchie and or Carr, He's in a situation where I feel like he's got to win it pretty convincingly. Like, he's got to clearly be the best guy in order for him to feel comfortable. And again, I'm trying to put myself in his shoes. I don't know what he's going to do. And I don't want anyone to take this like I'm rooting for this. Like I'm not rooting for like really anything. I think they're all good. So I think when you kind of advocate one thing for over another player, I think people get the impression
they take it as a slight to the other guy.
That's what we want. I truly do not care. It is what it is. It'll work itself out. But I don't know. The quarterback thing is like very, very fascinating. As fascinating as it's been at Notre Dame in a very long time.
I know people think that I'm a Kenny Minchie hater because I've complimented the other guys, and I ultimately think it's going to be a CJ Carr, Steve Angeli battle when it's all said and done. So there you go. Maybe I'm a Kenny Minchie hater because I picked him to finish third, even though I think he's a really good quarterback.
Here's what's funny before we move on. The last 2 years, we have heard in the spring that Minchie was ready to pass Angeli, was on the verge of passing Angeli for number 2, and it's never happened. But we've heard it numerous times. Like, they like him, but he's never passed Angeli for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. It's just, that's what makes the whole thing kind of interesting to me.
He had a golden opportunity last spring too.
Yeah.
With Riley Leonard out. I thought there was a real chance that coming out of that, Angeli would transfer, Minchie would be the backup, and it didn't happen then. And I thought, well, maybe after fall camp, maybe at some point during the season, that'll start to change, and maybe they'll want to bring in Kenny Minchie, because maybe at that point, if it had been an even race, and they're like, we kind of already have seen what we have in Steve Angeli, that never happened. They stuck with Angeli the whole time, and I do think that's telling. But is there another position battle, we've already talked about quarterback, offensive line, that really intrigues you going into spring?
Position battle. I think that second safety spot is pretty interesting to me, just in terms of, or I guess it might be the third safety spot, but someone's going to play next to Adon Schuler, and whether it's Urlacher or Luke Tolich, or what do they do with Bronte Johnson? Do they keep him at corner on the boundary? Or do they move him back to safety and try to get him acclimated to that spot if that's going to be his long-term position? You also have Carson Hobbs there, right? And like, is he a viable third corner? Like, is that a real thing? Because Notre Dame kind of went out of their way to not play him in key snaps last year, like, and understandable reasons. And it's not a slight at Carson Hobbs. It's more of, we don't actually know if he's ready to play real snaps yet. Obviously Leonard Moore, like they were very comfortable putting him in key positions, or in, key moments last year. Like they played him a whole game against Louisville, right? They were ready to do that. When Ben Morrison got hurt, they moved Jordan Clark out there, right? So that was their move. They didn't want to, and this was also after Jaden Mickey left the team. Whenever there was an issue there, they were going to move Jordan Clark. Again, that's not a slight against Carson Hobbs. It makes total sense. Not every freshman's ready to play in key moments like that, but we don't actually know that he's capable of it. So that this spring will be an interesting look for him at that. The same thing kind of like with Urlacher, the same thing with Urlacher, Talich, and Bronte Johnson. I think the linebacker situation between Osbury, Sneed, Madden Faremo, like, can he get involved there? Right. That's going to be super interesting to me. I'm just trying to think. Wide receiver, right? Micah Gilbert, Logan Saldate, how do they fit? Those aren't really position battles, but like, are they going to be viable? Are they going to be real guys before before Will Pauling, before Malachi Fields gets on campus, things of that nature?
The wide receiver and linebacker competition is similar because it's like, at linebacker especially, they're going to rotate 5 guys.
For sure.
They're going to do that. They did that last year. They'll figure out a way. But Jack Kaiser was the weak side linebacker last year. I think KVA has the best chance to start at will, even though he's been a Mike since he's been on campus. But Drake Bowen has sort of just taken over that role. I think he's going to be a leader of the team, leader of that defense. And I just think the way that they rotate, because, Jalen Sneed had a bit of a career renaissance during the second half of that season too. So it's like there's so many different guys who could play that spot, but it'll probably get figured out. Wide receiver, it's really interesting because they've got Logan Soldate, Will Pauling, Jaden Greathouse, hell, even Jordan Faison. Like, they all are kind of slot receivers. And then you have Malachi Fields, who's a true boundary, and Mikey Gilbert, who could play the boundary as well. So it feels like at wide receiver, it's guys competing for 2 open spots because Greathouse, Faison, Fields, and Pauling are going to play. There's no world where those 4 guys aren't out there a lot. So those are the 2 that I'm really looking at the most. But I already kind of alluded to it. I see Drake Bowen as a potential leader of the team. This team has a lot of leadership roles that need to be filled. They lost Watts, Kaiser, Riley Mills, Riley Leonard. Those are some all-time great Notre Dame leaders. And now they need some more guys to step up into those roles. So who do you think steps up as the vocal and emotional leaders of this team?
Bowen definitely is one. I'll bet you he's a captain. He's going into his 3rd year in the program, so he's going to be a junior. I think I want to say at the end of last year, he had the green dot next to Kaiser. Yeah, they both had it. So, once you're already doing that, that's a big deal. I think Schuler is another one. Same kind of situation as Bowen, right? Going into his junior year, but like the leadership role in the middle, he played so many snaps last year. I think that's really key. It's interesting on the front, right? Like anyone on the D line, can anyone kind of take that? Like maybe Burnham can get on that. Maybe Batelho. Like, it's surprising. Like, his personality doesn't seem to lend itself, but maybe he can get into that kind of role because of he's been around for so long. So that'll be interesting to see. And then on offense, like that's very difficult, right? I don't think it's going to be any of the quarterbacks. Maybe Billy Strouth is a guy, right? Maybe Emil Wagner could be a guy who steps into that. He's been in the program for a long time, and he played the most snaps on the team last year, offense or defense, just short of 1,000. He played, I think, 3 more snaps than Xavier Watts did last year. Jeremiah Love, he could be a captain, right? And by the way, running back, like behind Love and Price, that's kind of sneaky. Aeneas Williams, Kedron Young, Jabron Payne is still on the roster. And, Nolan James, the true freshman. So that kind of 3rd running back group there, that's going to be interesting in the spring as well. So
I think Jeremiah Love will probably be named a captain because he's the best player on the team. But
yeah,
he's not really going to be a full participant during spring. He was dealing with that knee injury throughout the playoffs. Yeah. So I feel like the most important thing with Jeremiah Love is going to be what's his what is his role as a leader of this team? Because I think when he's so clearly the best player on the team, everyone else around him is going to look up to him in some capacity. And it's like, how much is he going to use that? Is he a really, rah-rah speech guy? I don't really know, but that's going to be something I'm most interested in seeing. And obviously you want him to get healthy as soon as possible. Greg will be right back here with us in just a moment to discuss what to expect from new defensive coordinator Chris Ash in his first spring session with the Irish. But first, a word from our sponsor, Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with the marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale my business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown. Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup. Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free. It's your team every day.
On the defense, these next few weeks are going to be critical for new defensive coordinator Chris Ash as the team transitions from Al Golden to Ash's defense. I don't think we're going to see like a ton of advanced stuff on that side of the ball during spring, but what are you hoping to see from the defense over the next month with Chris Ash in charge?
Hoping to see. Probably hoping to hear about. First of all, we're not going to see much of anything. So probably hear about. I will be interested to hear if they are trying some new things in coverages, especially to the field. Like, I think we saw at the end of last year that a lot of, Christian Gray specifically, like what they were asking him to do kind of accentuated a weakness of his, which is turning and running. It wasn't just the Ohio State game. It was the USC game. It was part of the Navy game. There were times, multiple times last year where he was just kind of getting outrun a little bit when he was asked to turn and run. When he could face and receivers were trying to run in breakers or anything short, like intermediate, he was on that stuff completely. He just had that one weakness. And obviously that weakness led to some big completions, against him, to say the least, right?
Just so
is there something that Chris Ash has in mind that can kind of mitigate that weakness a little bit and accentuate more of the strengths that Christian Gray has? Or can he just improve in that area? That's also available to him. And then just getting like a lot of the, like what I want to hear about is the development of, the D line, right? Like that's one that you want to hear positive things about, right? Especially on the interior, like Onye, he's playing well. Rubio is kind of upping his game. I think Donovan Hines, we kind of know what we're getting from him, but like Junior Tulihalamaka, Bryce Young, like how is he kind of building towards, like, I think that we all assume that he's going to take a big jump, but you want to hear about it. You want to hear that he's dominant in practice, or he's giving Emil Wagner a bunch of problems, or he's giving Jagusa or Knapp or whoever just a bunch of problems, right? That would be something, because you want your stars to ascend to be stars, right? Same thing with like KVA, right? So yeah, those kind of things. How is Devonta Smith kind of integrating himself into the defense? We all assume he's going to be the starting nickel, probably will be the starting nickel. Who is his backup, right? You want to hear that they're building behind their front line guys, because I think their front line is going to be really, really good. I'm very bullish on the defense in terms of their front line. They have opportunities to build up the back end of their defense in terms of, whoever's sitting behind the first team guys. There's a lot of talent sitting there. There's a lot of options, but you do want to hear that those things are in fact happening.
I want to keep it to the defensive line, but real quickly, you made a great point about Christian Gray, because what were the two best plays he made all season? Two of the most impactful plays for the entire season last year. First one, breaking on that 4th and 2 against Texas A&M, the season opener, saw the slant, read it, deflected the pass, game. Penn State, game-sealing interception, guys running a dig, makes a great play there. So great point by you. For the defensive line, I think so much of it boils down to Jared Dawson. And considering a lot of the transfers that Notre Dame brought in aren't even going to be able to participate in spring, like Malachi Fields, Jalen Stroman, like I am so excited to see what Jared Dawson can do, but I'm also a little bit nervous because I think he is so critical to what this team is next year on defense, because if they don't have solid interior play, then teams are going to run all over them. And then at that point, stopping anyone is going to be an issue. So what are your expectations for him going into spring practice? And he's going to be a 6th-year senior. So he's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah. To him, it's solidifying himself to me as a number 1 guy. Like he's the guy going out there. And as you said, 6th-year guy has an opportunity to be a low-key leader on the team. You know, if he's going to be that A1 starter at the 1 Tech, can he then create a leadership role for himself? I think it's really needed, right? You always want a guy, you know, goes, you know, kind of, you want it up the middle, right? So last year you had Kaiser, middle linebacker, you had Xavier Watts, safety, and then you had Cross and Mills in the middle of the defense. Like you want it up the spine is what they say on defense. And they don't really have that right now. Like they have Bowen and I think they have Schuler. You want that 3rd player up the middle. Can it be Jared Dawson, right? He's been in college. He's played a bunch of snaps, right? Sometimes you don't need to be. We've seen Notre Dame's quarterbacks do it, right? We've seen Hartman come in and be a captain. We saw Riley Leonard come in last year and be a captain. Can a transfer who is as experienced as Jared Dawson is, can he do it? That's kind of what I'm hoping for, is like to hear that Jared Dawson has come in and kind of placed his stamp on the defense is like, I'm going to be the man and I'm ready to kind of lead the interior defensive line.
Last question I have before we share a bold prediction. You talked about the spine of the defense, and Adon Schuler is going to be starting safety. We know that. Could be the next great Notre Dame safety in a long line of them. I think I've said before, I expect Jalen Stroman to ultimately be the starter next to him, but the fact that he's missing all of spring practice, he's been dealing with shoulder injuries throughout his career, like this could be an opportunity for another Adon Schuler situation where it's a player who made no impact early on and then just has a great spring, surprises everyone, and then ends up winning the job before, in last year's case, it was Rod Hurd could even really try. So how do you see that battle shaking out for that other safety spot?
So I know Jamie is really like way in on Kennedy Urlacher, and for good reason. I mean, he played as well as anyone could when he came in against Purdue, right? Like he was flashing all over the place and he kind of jumped out. I'm a Luke Talich guy. I just like his length. I like his instincts. I think that he has good, I guess, pedigree in terms of just like his size and his ability to make plays. I think the fact that he continued to show out on special teams throughout the year, I thought the play he made against Florida State was a really good kind of high IQ kind of play. And I don't know how people feel about him as an athlete. I know that I'm very high on his athletic ability. He's a really good athlete. He's a plus athlete. I think he's going to come in and be kind of gangbusters. You know, if I was to make a guess on like who's going to kind of flash as like an up and comer on defense, like I would say Luke Talich. It's kind of put down my marker on that. I think he's going to be strong. I think he's going to push really hard for that 3rd safety spot, if not win the 2nd safety spot outright.
That'd be great considering his length and his physical profile. Like Urlacher's got the name, and I think he's a really good football player. But when you compare the physical traits, like Luke Talich is kind of on a different level. All right, last thing. We do this every year. Yeah. Give me your bold prediction that we can revisit once spring practice is over.
So last year was Christian Gray,
we both were on Christian Gray.
Yeah, we both on. It was star that, and in fact, he was not in spring, but it carried over to.
He had a really good fall. Yeah, that's kind of.
So I think our heart was in the right place. Do you remember what was our first year? I don't remember.
I will never forget mine because it was maybe the worst thing I've ever said into a microphone. I said that. Caleb Smith, the OG Caleb Smith, the transfer wide receiver from Virginia Tech. I said he was going to be wide receiver 1.
Let's go.
And then he transferred because 3 freshmen who ultimately weren't even, or 4 freshmen, I should say, they were all better than him from day one.
Yeah.
And he quit the team because he knew he wasn't going to play. And I think he just quit football entirely.
I think I'll have to go back. I think I'll probably have to go back and listen. I think mine was equally bad. I think mine
it wasn't as egregious.
I remember it wasn't good.
When you say a guy's going to be the best receiver and then he quits because he's literally the worst, it really does not get much worse than that. But we did rebound last year. We said Christian Gray was going to kind of become a star, and it's funny. It's like after the Texas A&M game, the stock, the Christian Gray price was high. And then, as the season went on, it got lower and lower. I'm still personally high on him. I think that he got Leonard Moore's success overshadowed what he did last season. He obviously had some loud misses as well, but I'm still high on Christian Gray. But we're on to a new season. We can't pick Christian Gray.
Yeah. Mikey Gilbert is the breakout guy. Everyone's going to be talking about him. Ton of buzz. I'm a big believer. I think he's always looked good. He's looked good every time we've seen him. He moves good. I like his body type. I like the fact that he was cooking second team guys throughout his time at Notre Dame. And I think he's going to have a good spring. He's going to have a lot of opportunity because Malachi Fields is not on campus yet. So
do you think Mikey Gilbert will be a starter, like top 3 wide receiver by the time the season starts, or just maybe the first guy off the bench?
Yeah. I think he'll be like the 4th guy. Yeah.
I mean, that'd still be pretty good considering Notre Dame hasn't really had a ton of homegrown wide receivers really pop lately. Although, Jaden Greathouse at the end and Jordan Faison, but it feels like they kind of lucked into Jordan Faison.
They definitely did, for sure.
All right, my bold prediction is I think Bryce Young is going to have like a Stephon Tuitt level jump from freshman to sophomore season. He had like a couple sacks his freshman year and then had 11 in 2012 and, was a big reason why that team went to the national championship. I just am kind of banking on this insane trajectory that he's been on since his junior year of high school, where he went from like this pretty modest 3-star recruit, great name, to 5-star, to player who's, one of the first guys off the bench on Notre Dame's defensive line, to making a sack in the college football playoff, and then just, crashing into the Georgia punter over and over again. This really isn't helping my argument, but I think that this spring, I think he's just going to take a leap, and we're talking about him like, okay, so he's clearly the starter. Burnham's going to find his spot, but like Bryce Young could be better or as good as like Trey Orey or any of those guys in the defensive line.
There's some like Kyle Hamilton parallels to him in terms of when he committed kind of early, then he blew up at the end of his high school career, but it kind of didn't matter because he was already committed to Notre Dame, so it wasn't like, oh, this 3-star we once got is now like a 5-star, and then had a role, like a key role in some big moments as a freshman, and then he kind of takes that next step. So I think Kyle was a little bit more splashy, either when he arrived at Notre Dame and as he played as a freshman, but it's kind of the same trajectory. So, look, this all tracks, man. It's definitely possible.
Hopefully we're both right. But before we let you go, tell the people where they can find you and all of your work for Irish Sports Daily.
Yes, sir. I do Hit and Hustle with Jamie Uwayama on our YouTube channel, Irish Sports Daily's YouTube channel. So go to YouTube. You're already on YouTube if you're watching this. So head over to Irish Sports Daily, hit the subscribe button, and check out our content. This is releasing probably Tuesday morning. We have a show at 12 Eastern time coming up. So look forward to that. And then, check out our stuff.
All right, man. This has been a ton of fun. As always, look forward to catching up with you again soon. Take care.
All right, brother.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. Be sure to tune in to tomorrow's crossover episode with Brian Smith as we react to the biggest news and headlines from Pot of Gold Day. In the meantime, remember to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's podcast. And if you enjoyed the show, give this video a like if you're watching along on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, please rate the show 5 stars, leave a review, and I'll see you tomorrow.